Today we are counting down the top 10 most valuable Marvel comics with a cover date of the year 1979. This year is interesting for a few reasons. Some people would say this is the beginning of the Copper Age. Why? Because two important things happened in 1979. First of all, the mini-series is invented by DC Comics, starting a huge trend that continues to this date. And maybe more importantly, the direct edition version printings begin in 1979. So we, for the first time, have two versions of comics released every week. We have the newsstand edition with the regular barcode, and we have the direct edition, which has the barcode, but has a line drawn diagonally through it. And early on, though, the direct editions are quite rare, and the newsstand is what's common. But of course, over the decades, this will completely flip. Eventually, the newsstands will become rarer and rarer as the direct editions take over the market. So let's dive into the top 10 most valuable comics of 1979. This was a big year for me. My favorite year as a kid. I had about 300 comics at this point. I was 8 years old, and I loved a little bit of everything. Number 10 on the list is Spectacular Spider-Man, number 27. This is the first art that Frank Miller ever did for the character Daredevil, before he even worked on the Daredevil title. So this is a major key. It's been always sought after. And one thing I want to also point out is this is also the first year that you can actually buy comics in the top 10 for less than $100 in high grade raw condition. So this is now getting to be an affordable age. Why are they more affordable? Well, because comics are getting hoarded and speculated on, and back issue shops are popping up, and comics are being saved more than ever, and people are starting to bag and board their comics. So we're finding more and more high-grade copies have survived. So let's talk a bit more about Spectacular Spider-Man 27. Obviously, it's the 27th issue of the run, but more importantly, as I mentioned, it's Frank Miller's first Daredevil art. This issue also features the Masked Marauder, and Carrion has a cameo. Dave Cockrum cover art. So as I mentioned, you'll see here, and actually we can point out there's technically 3 versions, because Whitman would publish a version with a blank barcode box, and that would get distributed only certain places. But all of these versions are fairly common, so you can hunt them out. You might even want to collect them all. You can see that the 35-cent price tag on each one is a little bit different as well. This is the 10th most valuable comic of the year. Print run estimated at 219,000 copies. On the CGC census, there's almost 1,000 copies graded, with almost 400 9.6s or better. In the Overstreet price guide, though, raw prices are pretty well stalled at the moment. $5 for low grade, no movement, and $85 for a raw 9.2. On the census, we have one 9.9 copy graded, and then 151 9.8. So that's the top condition books of this book. Number 9 on our list, again, for the 5th year in a row, X-Men back issues are the most highly collected run. So even non-key issues have high price tags because demand has driven the prices up. So we're going to look at X-Men 119. This one features the regular gang, plus Moses Magnum, Sunfire, and Misty Knight appear in this issue. Dave Cockrum cover, John Byrne art interior. This comic came out early in the year, so there is only a newsstand cover with the regular barcode. Print run estimated at 171,000 copies. X-Men being more popular has over 1,500 copies graded, and 600 9.6s or better. Heritage has sold quite a few. Again, in Overstreet, stalled in all grades again, $5 low grade, $85 for a raw 9.2. On the census, there again is a 1 9.9 and 225 9.8s. There is also a few of the UK price variant edition. 5 copies graded, and there happens to be one 9.6. Next on our chart is X-Men 118. It ranks 8th of the year, but also notice on my chart, it ranks as the 262nd most valuable Marvel comic of the entire decade of the 1970s. Now, this issue features the first appearance of Mariko Yashida, and a whole bunch of the characters in the last issue are still in this storyline. Print run again, 171,000 copies, and again, CGC, almost 1,400 copies graded, over 500 9.6s or better. And again, no movement in all prices in the Overstreet annual price guide. On the census, again, there's one 9.9 and 176 9.8. And again, a few of the UK price variants, including one 9.6 again. Iron Man 128 is a classic iconic cover from this year. It's rare that a comic book is valuable just because of the cover, but that's really the case here, with Iron Man ranking in 7th place. And Iron Man 128 features the alcoholism storyline, and this is a classic cover of Tony Stark as an alcoholic. On the CGC census, 1,400 copies graded in total, including 159 9.8. Next on our list, in 6th place, Avengers 181. This new lineup issue features the first appearance of Scott Lang, who would go on to become the second Ant-Man. He would become Ant-Man in the next month in Marvel Premiere 47. This book features a George Perez cover and John Byrne art. There is only a newsstand edition of this book. Print run estimated at 230,000 copies. This was definitely one of Marvel's biggest selling titles at this time. CGC census has over 1,100 copies graded, with almost 500 9.6s or better. And this book cracks the $100 mark in high grade raw, but again, no movement in Overstreet in the last couple of years. There are 185 9.8s and a few of the UK price variants, including one 9.6. Number 5 is XMen 121. This is a very important storyline in the history of X-Men because it is the first full appearance of Alpha Flight. Misty Knight and Colleen Wing also appear in this issue. Dave Cockrum cover, John Byrne art, and Byrne even makes a cameo appearance in the story. This comic only has a newsstand edition cover and print run at 171,000 copies. This is a major key. Almost 2,800 copies graded by CGC, including almost 1,000 9.6s or better. Again, no movement in Overstreet in the last couple of years. So affordable book to find out in raw copies. Of course, check out eBay sales and the GP analysis to see how slabbed CGC comics are selling. Of course, high grade copies are always breaking records. On the census, we have 342 9.8. In 4th place, also relating to that issue, we have technically the first appearance of Alpha Flight, but not the first full. And this issue also features the first appearance of Vindicator, formerly known as Weapon Alpha. This is the last 35-cent issue with John Byrne art, Bob Budiansky cover art. And 171,000 print run again. Over 2,000 copies graded, over 300 9.6s or better. And again, in Overstreet, still fairly small, but look, it's actually moved up a little bit in higher grades. Now $135 raw for 9.2, still very affordable in low grades. On the census, there are 84 9.8s, 277 9.6s, and a lot of the UK price variants have been graded, with a 9.6 being the highest. Number 3 most valuable Marvel comic of the year was Marvel Premiere 47. This is a major key book, especially in the last few years, because it features the first appearance of Scott Lang as the new Ant-Man. Some people call him Ant-Man number 2. And of course, he would become the main character of a run of Ant-Man movies, which really helped propel this book to be an expensive book. Bob Layton cover. So you can see since the first movie came out, CGC census has skyrocketed, over 2,000 copies graded, and over almost 600 9.6s or better. And you can see on the Overstreet price guide annual that it's been stalled for the last couple of years, but you can see where it really had a big jump. So a decade ago, it quadrupled in lower grades and has gone up 8 times in higher grades. There are 175 9.8s And there's one 9.6 of the UK price variant. Number 2 of the year, Daredevil 158. This is Frank Miller's first issue as the official artist on this title. This issue also features the origin and death of Deathstalker. Black Widow also appears. There is only a newsstand edition of this book, which is the case for all of the early 1979 releases. Print run estimated at 125,000 copies. This was not one of Marvel's better selling titles at this time, but Frank Miller would help make it a huge success again. And again, on the census, it's gone crazy in just the last year. Over 2,000 copies graded, including almost 500 9.6s or better, 40-cent cover price. Overstreet in the last decade has not moved at all in low grades, but has had a bit of a jump in the highest grades, raw. On the census, we have 169.8s. There's only a few of the UK price variant, with a 9.4 being the highest. And the most valuable Marvel comic of 1979 by far is Amazing Spider-Man 194. This has been a key book for many decades now. The first appearance of the Black Cat. This issue also features Mysterio, has a Al Milgrom cover art. There are 4 copies graded 9.9 because this is a major key. Everyone's hunted it out. 258,000 copies printed in total. There is a newsstand and a direct edition, as you can see here pictured side by side. 40-cent cover price. Over 6,000 copies graded by CGC, with over 1,300 9.6s or better. Heritage has sold a lot of copies of this. In the Overstreet price guide, it's stalled in lower grades, a bit of movement in highest grades raw. On the census, the 4 9.9s, as well as 385 9.8s. And there's also, later was a German and a Mexican edition printed that have been graded by CGC. Comparing these books on the CGC census, let's see what we notice. So the book by far with the most copies graded is Amazing Spider-Man 194, with over 6,000 copies graded and even 4 9.9s. Lowest on the list is Spectacular Spider-Man 27. Only 926 copies graded in total, but there is a 9.9. Looking at which book is generally the most common on the census would be either Spider-Man 194 or X-Men 121, has 1,000 copies in the 9.8 and 9.6 range. The scarcest book on the list would be probably, actually, the Spectacular Spider-Man 27. Miraculously, there is a 9.9, but other than that, it has the lowest number of copies for sure in the higher grades and on the census in total. So there you go, the top 10 key, most valuable, and historically important books for Marvel of 1979. Thanks for watching. We'll be back again next week, as always, with another year.